Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, it worked.
Oh, what? Okay. Here we go.
I know.
I'm nervous.
Yes, yes. I have to see if it's backwards on the line.
Do you want me to delete it?
No, it looks not.
No.
I can't get it. No.
But you can't see anything. It's live.
Mine's just the chat. Mine's just the chat that's going to come up, right?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so.
Do I need to learn more?
She was able to get it, right?
It's working.
Okay. Okay. Oh, we're on? Okay. Hello, and welcome to Maryland Council of Teachers of Mathematics, or MCTM's first webinar on finding the I in teacher. My name is Michelle Lerner, and I am here to facilitate tonight. We have a panel here that we'll introduce in a minute of experts to help us out. So we wanted to put together a webinar on finding the I in teacher because we know that a lot of our early career teachers are starting to feel at this point in the year maybe a little bit of that burnout or feeling a little bit stressed by just the natural pressures of this job. So we wanted to make something that could combat that and really make sure that they are bringing their wellness and their well-being into their path. So let's go ahead and let's introduce our panel because these are experts because they are all novice teachers. They've been identified by their peers as being very successful in their craft. So that's why we have asked them to join us. So why don't we go ahead and introduce ourselves. Let's go with our name, how many years we've been teaching, and our position.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Juanita. I am currently in my second year of teaching, and I teach first grade, so elementary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. This is my fourth year of teaching, and I teach middle school, 7th grade.
Hi, everyone. I'm Farah. This is my second year of teaching, and I teach high school.
Awesome. Thank you guys for being here. I know you guys have lots of things you could be doing tonight, so thank you. I know it's a nice day, but thank you very much. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So how it's going to work tonight is I have some pre-made questions that I can go ahead and ask them. However, this is for any novice teachers out there wanting to ask any questions. So please feel free to type in the comment box. I have my feed here going, so I will be happy to answer one of your questions for one of these awesome women. So let's go ahead, let's get started. So how do you balance between work and life? Why don't we try that with Farah?
So for me, I try to find something I absolutely love and just do it once a week. On the weekend, just something that I love to do, whether it's a hobby or just taking time for myself. I also let Sundays kind of be my makeup days. So I don't do any schoolwork on Saturdays. When I leave work on Friday, I kind of leave work at work. And then Sunday, I kind of catch up a little while watching football.
All right, that's awesome. Would you like to add anything, Rachel?
Sure. I think for me, it's really easy to come home after school and just to kind of have your job and your responsibilities blend until you go to bed almost. So I try and give myself like a break where my brain is not on school whatsoever. So at the end of the day, whatever time it is that I come home, I take 1 hour and I'll go to the gym or go to a yoga class or read a book, but I try and just like turn off my school brain for a full hour's worth of time. And then if I have, something that I need to do later that evening, I can always go back to it. But I think having that mental break right at the end of the day is really important because then I can go into whatever it is that I need to do that evening, like feeling refreshed, and I kind of have new eyes looking at it as opposed to just working all day nonstop. And I use the same rule as Farah. I don't do any work on Saturdays. I save it for Sunday.
Awesome. So I find myself constantly staying late at school and still cannot seem to get everything done. What advice do you have? Let's go to Rachel.
Sure. So for me, my first year, I found myself staying in the building pretty late at night, and it was really hard for me to kind of just peel myself away from everything that I wanted to do. So I ended up choosing like a cutoff time for myself. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, at 5 o'clock, I am going home. I don't care what I'm in the middle of or what crisis has happened. I am leaving at 5 o'clock. And I think it's really easy to like fool yourself into thinking that if you stay at school till 7 o'clock, that makes you a better teacher. But at the end of the day, you know, you personally have to be ready to go and come into your classroom mentally and emotionally in a good place. So, you know, the more time that you can take for yourself, the better teacher you actually will be at the end of the day. So just, you know, choose a cutoff time for yourself. If something isn't perfect, you know, it's better to be well rested and come in the next day good to go than it is to stay up later fixing it. So.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Oh, one of our other panel members is here. Hi, Zach.
Hi.
We will move on over for you. All right. Welcome, Zach. Zach, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Zach. I'm a middle school math teacher at Patuxent Valley Middle School, and this is my 6th year.
Okay, awesome. It's good to have you here. So let's go ahead. Let's try. Do you have suggestions on how I can work more efficiently during the school day so I have less work to do at home? And why don't we try Juanita?
Sure. So I believe that you should set a plan. For me, I like to plan at least a week in advance. And those are just kind of like your essential questions and just kind of like a detailed summary of what you want your lessons to look like for each subject. So that way, through the actual day, all I have to do is collect my material. So that kind of relieves some pressure that I have during the day that I can actually spend on either having other meetings with other teachers or simply just eating lunch. So that kind of relieves some of that. If you just do it in advance, you can pick any day that you would want, whether it's the weekend or maybe like a Monday, and then you kind of get for the rest of the week right there. And then I think that that kind of helps.
Nice. So making a plan right at the beginning.
Yes.
I like that. Farah, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah. I love to-do lists. So I'm very big on making to-do lists. I kind of find myself during my planning talking to other people, kind of getting distracted sometimes from what I actually really need to get done. And so when I make that to-do list, I kind of star the top 3 things and I'm like, these are the 3 things I need to get done. So sometimes I will kind of just stay at my desk, get all those things done, but kind of setting that goal for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That way you know that you're not walking out of your planning that period without getting at least a couple things done and staying productive.
That's great. I have a follow-up question for that, actually.
Yeah.
So how do you keep your to-do list from getting too long? Because I'm a to-do list person, but
Yeah.
sometimes I...
So I put specific days next to it. So like I'll kind of make like a long list and I'll kind of say like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And sometimes things get pushed back. Sometimes I kind of switch up the order, things get thrown in there. But as soon as it's done, I cross it out. And every week on Sunday, I kind of update that list. So sometimes things stay on there. Things are long-term sometimes. But sometimes a lot of things just get taken off and new things get added.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Zach, we're going to go to you. How do I balance school duties like coaching, advising, etc., without sacrificing my lessons?
So mine's kind of an outside perspective of the coaching aspect I've been in because I coach at a high school level. And a lot of it I've just come to recognize it's similar to when I played sports. It was no different. I was sacrificing time for certain things and just time management and figuring out what works best for me. So it's more of kind of like a me thing. And I personally found that a schedule for myself that worked best, that fit within that requirement to get things done that I needed to get done. The single biggest thing that I found, because there were moments that I felt where I burned out a little bit from it. But what I found that helped me best was just being in constant communication with my other coaches or people that were helping me around. And they were able to assist in making me feel less of, I guess, a burden at times, because sometimes I just didn't feel like doing it. And then, but they would help, and then that made ease a little bit.
That's great. I think also adding with that, I mean, you have coaches that you can kind of ask for help with, but you also have teachers on your team that you can ask for help with. There's always helpers in the building, people who want to look out for, I think, the younger, newer teachers.
Well, I think the biggest thing, like is just expressing that though, not being afraid to say that like, hey, I feel like I'm drowning.
Yeah.
Can you please throw me the life vest a little bit here? And majority 9 times out of 10 they're going to.
Yeah.
And feel for you, empathize with you.
Yeah. Well, they remember how they felt when they were in our shoes, so I think that helps too.
Right.
Yeah, I like that because I think that sometimes, especially being a new teacher, I think you have a lot of things that you're trying to do that you really don't know how to do all the way. And so it's kind of like, okay, I want to do this, but then I don't know how to do this, but then I want to tell her that I'm scared, but then I don't want to tell her that I'm scared. And so I think that just being completely honest, like how you said, and just realizing at the end of the day, you're a human. And I always remind myself that everyone always had like a first year or a first day at their job. You know, no one came being the CEO automatically. Like somebody had to start somewhere. So it's okay to acknowledge that and to be okay with that and to ask for help, especially with those people that have been in it longer than you, that maybe can give you some type of advice, and to really just lean on them to know that, hey, one day I could be that for someone else.
That's awesome. Yeah. So Farah, learning to say no is okay. What are some polite ways to say no? And I'm going to take notes on this one.
So I will say I've been working very hard on this one. I had a very hard time at first saying no, because people see the new teacher and they're like, oh, you have time, you have this, you have that. So for me, one of the biggest things I've said is, unfortunately, I have so much on my plate right now. I'll definitely keep that into consideration next year. So kind of keeping it open if it's something you are interested in doing, just not right this second. I believe being honest is the best policy. You don't want someone to think your answer is a maybe if you really just aren't interested. So you can say, like, honestly, I'm maxed out. I don't think this is something I would necessarily be interested in, but this might be another person. So kind of giving it off to someone else, giving other suggestions. That way you're not kind of leaving someone hanging. But you definitely want to make sure you're very clear on the no aspect of it, because they will continue to ask you again and again and again if you give them a maybe or I'll think about it.
Yeah.
I think something that comes to mind for me, if you don't mind me jumping in, is a lot of times for the younger teachers, I think people will say like, oh, you know, you're not married or you don't have kids yet, so you must have all the time in the world to get these things done. And I think it's important to value your own personal time just as much as an older teacher or someone with a family, and just knowing that it's okay that, you know, maybe you don't have kids, but you still need time for yourself, and that's important to acknowledge and value. So,
and you can say that. You can say like, no, Thursdays are my me days, or that's my trivia days, or whatever you might be doing, and just say no for that reason. It's okay to not have like other commitments, just want a day for yourself.
I like that. It's my mental health day.
Yeah, exactly.
So Zach, how do I lesson plan efficiently in terms of time management?
So as I was thinking about this, or as I'm thinking about this, I still struggle with this even after 6 years of doing it. And the single biggest thing I can tell you and to trying to do and to implement is literally putting a clock on yourself. On Google, like Google, for instance, on Google Slides, they have timers that you can put in there. And that's when I noticed that I'm the best with it. But otherwise,
oh, sorry, I said interesting to myself.
But otherwise, I mean, if I don't have that, I usually struggle. Because there's a multitude of things. I go on tangents. My mind is scatterbrained. I'm like a little kid. And so I struggle a lot of times with it unless I have that constant reminder. There are also times where I'll even put alarms on my phone if it's that urgent, or I'll say to the whole class, everyone put this time and alarm, and like, really? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, who? And I'm like, everyone. So we have 5 million of them going off, so I definitely won't forget. So that's a big key. I have found that works well for me. But yeah.
Jump right in.
No, I agree. So I set timers, especially for me during like reading groups and things like that. And we think that it's for the students, but it's also for you, because I'm the same way. I can go on a tangent, or something gets really good. A student says something that you're like, whoa, I need to talk 10 more minutes, you know? But that timer going off and then the kids switching, and you're like, okay, I have to switch as well. And I think also for me is like just identifying the big picture, because we have all of these lessons and we have all of these ideas, but really identifying what is it that you want your students to learn. And I think once you identify that, then you just kind of pick 2 or 3 things that you can kind of help to gauge them to get to that big idea. And that will kind of, I guess, alleviate all of the overdrawn, going too much, going overtime, and different things like that. Just get to the big picture. What is it that I want my students to learn from it, and how can I get them to do that?
That's awesome. Thank you. So Juanita, this kind of goes along with the no question. How do I set boundaries with my coworkers?
Oh, that's good. I think you have to identify with yourself what you want to share with them and what you don't. And I also think that sometimes we think that when we work with people, we have to be best friends with them, and that's not always the case. I always tell my students that, like, you don't have to be friends with the people in your class. You just have to do your best to work with them. And so that's kind of your own opinion and what you feel. If you want to have a deeper relationship with a coworker outside of work, then you have the ability to do that. But if you want it to be strictly about work, then I would advise you to just only talk about work things. But I do think that it's important to find a coworker that you feel like you can share with, that maybe it's not outside of work, but they will leave it there, if that makes sense. And maybe if there's something bothering you outside of work that it's affecting your work, that you can go to them, you can vent, they can hear you, and then they can help to encourage you. So that way, when you go into your students, you're healthy.
I like that idea of finding someone at your place of work too. Just having someone. It doesn't have to be on your team, especially if you're trying to have boundaries up. It could be someone who's not on your team, having that person.
Yeah.
So how do I manage school-induced stress? Do you want to try with this?
Sure. Yeah. So I started like just closing my door at certain points in the day. Like if I am so overwhelmed, like during my planning time and people keep interrupting me, like I'll just close the door and turn the lights off and just like hide a little bit. But it's really just like a moment for me to kind of like reset. I'll turn like peaceful music onto my laptop, like ocean sounds, just like really calm, because I feel like the environment can get so like high energy and so stressful at times that I just need to like turn it off even in the middle of the day. Something I started doing with my students is like before I give them a test or something, like we'll pass out the tests or the quizzes, and I like make everyone take 2 deep breaths all together. So like I literally do kind of like make everyone take 2 deep breaths. So if I ask them to do it, I also, practice that on my own. Like at the end of, 3 classes in a row, I just stop and take a couple deep breaths. On a silly note, like I keep some chocolate in my classroom, just like something that I know is like a pick me up for me, or just like a snack. So, if I've had like a stressful morning, I just like eat a candy bar and just kind of calm down. But you kind of have to figure out like what that looks like for you and what is going to be like your just little like treat that just kind of, calms you down a little bit. So that's what I do.
I like that idea. My Apple Watch tells me to breathe.
Oh, yeah.
So you have a minute of breathing. That's what that makes me think of. And the Calm app, like a little plug.
Yeah.
The Calm app is free for teachers. It's like super expensive if you're not a teacher.
Wow.
Yeah. I do it with my kids, and
Cool.
it's called Calm.
Okay.
And you have to apply and say you're a teacher,
Okay.
and it's $60 if you're not. And you go through the process, because I do it with my kids, but now I can also meditate on my own. But so I love that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
Juanita, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. No, I agree that I think that it's important to find some you time. For me, when I have a long day, a stressful day, I like to just go home. I get my favorite snacks and I watch my favorite TV show. And, the house is quiet. My husband knows, okay, it's that day, and I'm chilling. Or I like to have like a debrief partner. So that's my husband for me. He is also an educator, so he kind of understands all of it. And I think that it's important for someone to hear your heart and hear how you're feeling at that moment, but at the end of it, kind of put you back together. Because this job can be very stressful, and sometimes you just like kind of just vomit things out, but you need someone that is going to hear you, but also remind you of your purpose and remind you of what you set out to do and the importance of your presence in that classroom. And so I think that it's good to kind of have that person that provides that balance for you, so that it's not just one person that is like venting with you and like, yeah, don't do that anymore. Or that person is just like, oh, get over it. It's like that person that kind of knows both. It's like, okay, I understand, girl, but at the same time, let's get yourself together and get back to work tomorrow. So
I like that you mentioned that it's kind of a private thing as well, because it's important to be professional.
Yeah.
I mean, your workplace is a professional place, so not just exploding on the first person who can hear you, picking the right person to kind of hear you out on that. I like that. Zach, did you want to add anything to that?
A couple of things. I mean, one of the bigger things, and it seems so obvious, is just being around people that you enjoy. Because we're constantly around kids, we're constantly around our coworkers and constantly talking about those things. Being around different people kind of sets that to where you're venturing out of the school world and going to different and talking about different things. And it seems so obvious, but it is key. The other two other things that I have found that is very helpful for me. One is just finding the positive, and just could be the smallest thing in anything that I do. Especially with maybe like a struggling class, it's just finding that one little positive of anything. I mean, it could be just a kid picked up a pencil or whatever the case might be. I've always found that to just lighten me up, and also kind of helping me figure out, navigate how I can help them. Like, okay, well, how did I get him to do this? What stimuli kind of created that? And then the last thing is, like, I have different hobbies that kind of do different things. I have things that are so stimuli impactful that I can't concentrate on anything else but what I'm doing. And I have that to where it just kind of like, I go off in my own little world and I'm not thinking about anything at all but that, because I have to do that. And then I also have like another thing where I'm able to do something that's fun, but yet still able to think about what I need to think about, to where it kind of de-stresses me. I think about work, but I'm able to do it in a less stressful way. Certain games that I play that help me do that. And then there's other, like running, I'm able to do it while I run. But for instance, if I'm out wrestling, which is what I coach, I can't think about anything other than that. So that's like the one where I'm kind of free from everything, and it lets me fly, so to speak.
I like that. I think that's why a lot of people find peace in working out, or because it kind of keeps them busy and keeps their mind focused on something positive. I also like the what you were talking about earlier made me think of, we teach our kids positive self-talk, especially in the math classroom. How do you talk to yourself in a positive way? So kind of thinking about the positives, making sure you're focusing on that. It makes me think of what we teach our kids.
We actually started our team meetings this year. We start every meeting now with like, everyone has to share something positive that happened. And people were like, kind of resistant to it at first, but like every teacher in the room usually goes around and shares one little thing. And sometimes hearing someone else's moment of positivity can really uplift you also, or, it's things that, we wouldn't necessarily talk about, because I think when we interact with other teachers, a lot of the times it's to complain or to vent, and we don't focus enough on those positive things. So yeah, that's made a big difference, at least for the morale at the beginning of our team meetings.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right. So I had some trouble this year and I'm beginning to doubt my career choice and effectiveness as a teacher. Do you have any advice? Let's go with Juanita.
Yes. I think that it's important to remember why you started to become a teacher. And that's kind of just my own little philosophy. It's like, you remember why you started and you wouldn't want to stop. And I think that sometimes when we are overwhelmed or we feel like we're not doing our best, we kind of forget our why. We kind of forget our purpose. And so I feel like reminding yourself of why you actually started kind of brings you back to those feelings that you felt when you first wanted to be a teacher, when you first wanted to be an educator, your idea of, or how you felt about allowing students to explore and wanting students to grow, that they came into your school or came into your classroom barely being able to read and leaving being able to read and write. So I think reminding yourself of those things can kind of help you to push you along. I also think that if you look at every opportunity, not always as, oh, I failed or I didn't do this right, but an opportunity to grow. It's like, okay, I didn't know that, or maybe I didn't do that right, but this is the opportunity for maybe me to do some research, for me to maybe seek out my administration for some other strategies or tools, or to talk to my MST or RST as different strategies that I could use to improve in these different areas. So I feel like if you look at it as an opportunity to grow rather than a failure, I think then your mindset will be different. So I think that overall it's just your mindset, the way that you look at it, the way that you feel about yourself, because I feel like if teachers feel bad about themselves, they kind of project that on their students. So I think that it's important that you understand that you're human, that you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay, but it's really what you do from that mistakes that either pushes you forward or pushes you back.
I like that. It makes me think of a book that I read a few years ago about the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. I like that. Rachel, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do ongoingly is I keep like a folder, either like in my email, and then I have like an actual folder, and I call it Warm and Fuzzies. So it's like all of the positive notes or emails or letters or cards that I've ever received from a student or a parent ever. And, you know, some of those things you overlook, like if a parent sends you an email and says, you know, thank you so much for helping my child, that's a big moment. Like that should be saved and filed somewhere, because I feel like sometimes we read those emails a lot faster than the emails we get of complaints or negativity. So I have a whole folder in my email of all those positive things I've ever received. And when I'm having a rough day, I go back and I reread every single one of them. And then I have an actual physical folder of like just, you know, Christmas cards or end of the year cards or what have you from kids. And I keep every single thing. So I even like, I'll hang some up on my bulletin board just so they're like in eyesight, but that's like a really good resource for me just to go back and kind of remind myself of my purpose, like we're talking about. And then one other thing I did my very first year was I kept a journal right when I started teaching, and it was very sporadic, like maybe once a week or once a month. I just write down a quick entry, and it was a lot of just like venting and processing. That was like my debrief partner, I guess, was just writing. But even at the end of the year, I went back and reread some of the entries from September, and I realized just how far I had come. And some of the things that concerned me in September were like so far beyond me now that I was worried about new and different issues. And I didn't even realize how far I had come. But in reflecting back and thinking about where I was a few months ago, that kind of helped me confirm that, you know, I am making progress and this is where I want to be. And there was a tangible like record of it. So
I like that. I think when you start to feel a little bit like you're drowning and you're questioning your effectiveness, you kind of, it's easy to be like, oh, well, the grass is greener on this side. I'd be better at this if this wasn't the case. But I think having a record of, no, look, I actually am being successful here, and something is actually coming from this. I like that.
That's good.
Yeah. So I have one more question. I feel as if I'm not reaching every student every day, and I am obsessing over this. Do you have advice on this, Juanita?
Okay, so our job as educators don't always reflect immediate gratification. And so I kind of had this little metaphor that I came up with. So teachers are there to plant the seed and or water the plant. We might not ever see the flower grow, but we have to have the faith that it will. So sometimes we have students that we see and we're like, oh, we're doing this for them. We have all these strategies. We have these toolboxes for them. And it just seems like even at the end of the year, like nothing has changed. And then you see them a year later, 2 years later, 3, 4, 5 years later, they maybe have even graduated, gone to college, and they're like, you're my best teacher ever. And then you're just like, really? Because, you know, and so it's really just that idea that you have to do what you have to do with what you have. You have a year to make that impression, to make a difference in their life, and you have to know that you are, even though you don't see the physical effects of it. And then you have to know that hopefully one time later in the year, or later 2, 3, 4 years from then, that they may see you again, or you may hear something about them, and you'll see the great things that they have done, and then you'll feel good about yourself because you'll say, wow, I had something to do with that. Maybe it wasn't all of it, but I had a little impact on them.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I think that's huge for a lot of teachers. That's huge for me, going to bed at night and being like, oh God, this student didn't get it tonight. And God, what's their future? And kind of just steamrolling it, but taking a step back and really objectively looking at it and being like, no, I am planting these seeds. Things are happening. They're growing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that metaphor. So that's it for all of our questions tonight. So before we wrap up, I can't see any. Before we wrap up, oh, I can't see any of our questions. Apparently we have a few questions, but I can't see them. Oh no. I'm so sorry. I clicked something. I was like, no questions. Oh, thank you. All right, so never mind.
Oh,
it's-
I've been
I've been like, wow,
Hi,
no
everyone.
one. All right. Wow. That's it. Oh, wow. I see. It's been white this whole time. I'm not a technology person. That's all right. So let me scroll back through. Let's see if we have any questions. Okay. Robin asks, many new teachers struggle with staying organized with all of their requirements. How would you suggest they manage it? Would someone like to take that?
Yeah, this is a hard one because I'm still struggling with it. I think that's why we're all quiet. I thought I was an organized person, and then it just like there's 87 papers coming at me every minute of every day, and you need so many more filing cabinets than you ever dreamed you could need. I just have a system just to kind of like, I put everything in a folder and I label the folder. So at some point I will find whatever it is that I need, but I try and just organize it by like section in my file cabinet. So it'll be, like observation information, professional development, meetings, and you build as you go through your first year what different labels that you need. I think the question was more about
organizing the requirements.
Yeah. So I think I talked a lot with my mentor teacher and my team leader just to kind of figure out like all the checklist items that I need to accomplish by certain dates. So we kind of set up like a little bit of a timeline so that, I didn't have to all of a sudden put together 10 artifacts in May. We kind of did it throughout.
I like what you said. I know I'm not a panel member, but I kind of wanted to add with that. At the beginning of every year, if I'm teaching something new, I create a file. I'm a very physical person. You might be someone who's technological. I actually guess I do that too. I make on my Google Docs as well as my filing cabinet, I make physical files of every standard I'm going to teach. I make like files. Yeah, technological files. That's going to come to me later. And I'm like, really? And I have all of that organized. But then in addition to all the standards I teach, I think about, well, man, I'm going to want one for my team meetings. I'm going to want a folder for my staff meetings. I'm going to want them for my ITL meetings. So thinking about all the different folders that you're going to want to organize your information. And then I put it all under that school year. So that way I can kind of go with that. And then with thinking about having things written down and dates, I have a very organized plan book that I have a specific box for each day dedicated to notes and things that need to get done. Right. So I can put that in any of my dates looking forward because mine's online. And then I click and I know that it's already there. So kind of just having a system of organizing all the things that need to get done and when. All right, let's see if we have any other questions. DP partner. Okay. Some new teachers struggle with contacting parents where there's conversations that need to happen. Although it's important, they go on too long eating in their planning or personal time. So calling the parents or taking too long. Any suggestions?
Is this like on a phone or in person?
I would assume on the phone. I do it in person too. I'm always the last to leave parent-teacher conferences. So I'm not going to give advice for this. But anyone else who wants to jump in on that one?
So when I try to do a parent conference, I actually tell them that they could come between like 7 and 7:20. So I kind of make it clear that school starts at 7:20. That way, even though it's not like a time limit, there is a time limit on it. The bell rings, and you're like, oh my God, I do have to get to class. Like, let's wrap this up. I don't know if I have one for in person. I'm not the best at in person.
Yeah.
Or I'm not in person, on the phone. Sorry. On the phone, I have trouble ending that sometimes.
On the phone, it's usually a little white lie that someone has come to the door, or I have a meeting I have to go to, or something like that. But I try to, obviously, you want to respect as much so that they're heard, or you're trying to also be heard in what's going on in the classroom. But usually, if it's a 10-15 minute mark, I have something I have to do. Unless obviously it's something deep we need to figure out.
All right. If you teach a singleton course, how do you find support so that you are not overwhelmed with all the potential planning? I can answer that.
Okay.
I teach fifth grade, and last year I taught the above grade level math class. So I taught sixth grade math, and no one in my building teaches that. So I actually reached out to people at other schools, and I asked, does anyone else teach this? I don't want to plan it alone. And actually, we're really, really close now. I would go over to her house every Wednesday, and we planned together. We actually had similar last names, and it was a weird connection. Two of our students thought that we had each other. They're like, you have Miss Lerner at Running Brook. And she was like, no, I have Miss Lardner at Phelps Luck. I reached out to someone. So that's something that I kind of did to help me with that. However, that's also the case for me again this year. This year I teach GT fifth grade math. So I teach a 6-7 math. And there's no one else in my building who teaches that either. And this year I haven't been able to find someone yet to plan with who's not in my school. So I think for my other subjects that I teach, you kind of make sure you're solid with that with other people. So that way, when it comes time to plan this all alone, you can. And I think using any resources you have available, there's so many great math support teachers and math coaches on Twitter that you can get your own professional development on. So I think I just stay very heavy on finding math coaches that talk a lot about 7th grade math, because that's, as an elementary school teacher, very overwhelming to me sometimes. So I think making sure you do find the resources that you can to help you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also teach an above grade level math. So I teach 2nd grade standards to my 1st grade students. So I meet with my math support teacher every week, once a week, to plan with her, because like you said, Michelle, I'm the only one in my building that teaches 2nd grade math in 1st grade. So I plan with my MST weekly to kind of have like the overall standards, and she'll give me like some suggestions as far as different activities that I can do. We also have, I reach out to her for different resources like books and different things like that I can retrieve some type of resource from. Of course, on Canvas, we have our online resource. And I personally kind of like it a little bit because it is different from all my other subjects, because I plan with my other coworkers on my other subjects. So I kind of feel like that's my free reign to kind of like explore and to do my own thing and kind of add my own creativity. So just look at it like that.
Well, with high school math, so next year I'm going to be teaching a singleton course that actually has not been offered in our school for the last couple of years, but it was offered 2 or 3 years ago. So I actually went to the teacher who taught it 3 years ago and got those resources. So, you know, finding someone who might have actually taught the class before, they might have something that would help you.
There's always people who are like excited to help with that too. Like, oh my gosh, you're teaching that. I love that. Let me help with that. If it's not in your building, it might be someone online. They're not a stranger online, but a math coach that you find online. They are very accessible on Twitter. All right, let's see. During my first year of teaching, I was told that it is that is important to find something to do that is uniquely you, something that has nothing to do with work. Do you have time for hobbies?
Yes.
Yes.
If you make time.
Yeah,
You make
you have to
time.
make time for it.
Yeah.
Oh, I was about to say, I think it goes back to kind of one of our questions earlier of how you balance work and life. I know, like, when I first started my first year, my principal was just like, home is at home, work is at work. And if you get in the system of taking work home, then it's going to be really hard to break that. So I completely, like, as soon as I leave school is done. Like, and then I kind of go and do my own hobby. So I dance and I also teach dance. So I kind of find that although it's a little extra of a responsibility, it's something that I actually want to do and that I like to do. So it's also kind of like that area that I relieve the stress that I have from work, and that I kind of just get to focus on something that I enjoy in an area in which I feel like I can express myself. So, yeah.
Just the kind of opposite, because I, for some reason, have never been able to break the outside work cycle.
Yeah.
Because when I'm in work, it's people like I talk to and I wander and I'm too ADD in the head sometimes. So I have to work at home, and I'm also for some reason, whatever reason, I'm a better thinker at night. And when I in certain spaces, I do much better. But at the same time, it's setting that time constraint on yourself. Like, for instance, it's usually 2 of the 3 days, either Friday, Saturday, I'm not doing anything work related. I'm not even thinking about it. And then Sunday, I'll like split up the day and do half and half kind of thing. Or, depending on what's going, it all depends on obviously what's going on. But typically there's that time where I find that time to, yes, I do what I want to do and not focus on school, work, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the hobby that I took up my first year of teaching was yoga. And I felt like just the classroom pace was so fast. Like, every minute of every day, your brain is making like 1,000 decisions of like, just, which kid do I call on? Do I yell at him for that? Like, what should I write on the board next? What question? Like, it's just like, there's so much flowing in your brain every minute. So yoga for me was like a way to like shut it all off and really slow down the pace of my day. And it kind of just like brought me down from the stress level of being at school, like really kind of calmed me down, so that when I went home, my headspace was more like in a creative zone where I could kind of think of new ideas instead of just constantly being at that 100-mile-an-hour pace. So I guess that was like the unique part of me that kind of started with teaching, was also like the yoga side of just like the mentally like slowing down the pace of my life for even an hour.
Okay. This one's funny. There's a first year teacher next door to me, and I know it's, is it true that you get more colds during your first year of teaching? And did this happen to any of you? It's true.
I think that I was sick like every other week.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I was just sneezing, and all of my coworkers were veteran teachers, and I was just like, what is this? And they were just like, your immune system has to get used to it. But my mother-in-law is a teacher. She's been teaching for like 20 something years. I'm trying to think about what it is that I take. It's some type of like supplement that kind of helps to build your immune system that I began to take. But second year is a little bit better, but still get sick a little.
The girl next door, the kids just all had the flu, and we all looked at her and we were like, oh no, it's coming your way.
Yeah.
My first year, the very first week of school, I got strep. I haven't had it since. So I do think you build it. I do think you build it. Yeah, let's do that. So yeah, that's unfortunately true.
I feel like I was definitely sick my first year, but I feel like a lot of it was me like not sleeping and not getting enough sleep. So I like kind of fooled myself into thinking like, oh, it's just, kids everywhere. But really I was sleeping like 4 or 5 hours a night. And of course I was sick like every day. So the second year I like set a cutoff time for my bedtime. I was like going to bed at 10 o'clock, no matter what. And I got like 6 or 7 hours of sleep every night. And I was so healthy, you would not believe. So I think it's easy to use that as an excuse, like, oh, there's germs everywhere. But if you're not taking care of yourself first, then there's only so much, your body can handle.
I think people underestimate how much stress takes a toll on your body,
Right.
And not allowing it to shut off and go to sleep. Sleep is important. Just to think about something you said earlier tonight, you said how we fool ourselves into thinking more hours we work means we're better. You need sleep. Physically, you need sleep. It makes me think of the oxygen masks in planes, how they always say, put it on yourself before putting it on someone else. Put the oxygen mask on yourself. Take care of yourself before you can teach students and make sure that they have what they need. How do you find time for professional development?
Seeking it. The biggest thing. I mean, I don't. The seeking out opportunities when given opportunities to go to them, not being afraid to ask to go to them, and do them and take time out to do it. The other thing too is, I know someone had mentioned it earlier, of just going on and looking at people's Twitter. I mean, when I do that, I get lost. Just clicking on everything I see and following new people that I haven't seen before, and reading articles and just starting with one person, I end up with 30 other people and a million different ideas. So self-induced, I guess you can say, in a way.
It's important you vet those sources, though.
Of course.
Pinterest and Teachers Pay Teachers, not always awesome. Make sure it's a coach of some sort or something. There's something backed. It's a journal. It's a scholarly article.
The other thing, I mean, usually you start with people you do know that are higher, I guess you can say, in the education world, and then usually you look for friends or things that they liked, and that's the way I navigate through.
Yeah, Twitter's huge, I think, for that. I also think I've worked with a few principals, and I think that if you seek opportunities where you might need a sub or you might need someone to cover you, they're happy that you want to better yourself. They often, like, even if they can't get you a sub, if they don't have the money for it, they will get creative. I have had like an assistant principal cover my room while I went and I just observed another teacher in my building that I wanted to see something she was doing. And I was like, can someone cover me? I really want to go see it. And they covered me because I wanted to learn. And that's any good administrator, that's their priority. They want you to learn. Any others on professional development?
Yeah, I think I was hesitant my first year to take advantage of those opportunities during the school day, because I was like, oh my gosh, then I got to go write sub plans, and then I got to deal with, whatever note is left when I get back. And it was kind of scary to take myself out of the classroom with the environment you're working so hard to create. But that is the time to do it. I mean, I think that's the best opportunity is during the school day, because then you're not losing hours, of your other time that we've talked about is so important tonight. So yeah, I would agree.
I also want to add, there's coaches in a lot of buildings. So asking the people, that's their job. Their job is to support you. If you have a reading support teacher or a math support teacher, that is their job. They're ecstatic when you ask for help. So, all right. I think we have one more question on here so far, unless anyone wants to, out there watching, needs to ask another question. So how long do you wait to lead professional development opportunities for others? I love that question.
Wait, can you read it one more time?
How long do you wait? Like, can you do that as a young teacher, lead other people, host professional development?
I did it before I started teaching.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gold star.
Thanks. I really wanted that attention. I'm back.
Class. Wow.
What did you do? I'm curious.
Well, gosh, I don't even remember now what I did then.
I'm curious.
I know.
I don't remember what I did then. I mean, I've done it several times personally, and I kind of thankfully had a great mentor, and shout out Beth Cobett, of kind of pushing me to do it. I mean, it's completely outside my zone because I am not a very loud and vocal person. And as you can probably see, and I'll even say it, I'm not staring at the camera half the time I'm talking because I feel weird about it. But it's just my nature, and I'm not. And she pushed me out, and she just said, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I took the opportunity. And ever since then, I mean, I don't know how many. It's been a few, and I think the very first one I did was probably on what my action research was, which our action research was more of an SLO when I was at Stevenson, and it was probably on that from what I remember. But I've done several different random things that I do within the classroom.
Nice.
I think it's important to remember, because I've done lots of professional developments. I think it's important to remember that, yes, while there's people who have more years and more experience than you, you've had more recent education. Better research has come out that you've received in your schooling that you have to offer. You have a lot to offer. So whereas you might not have all of the experience that they may have, you have something that you can offer. And I think that that's what the education community is all about, finding something that you're good at and sharing it, and then attending what other people want to share if that's something you're interested in. I think just knowing that your age doesn't mean that you don't have things to share.
Yeah. Okay. The summer after my first year of teaching, I actually did curriculum writing for my county, which was terrifying because I was working with a lot of people who had been doing it for years and years and years. But I think it was a really great opportunity for me to interact with other teachers in the county and really just to get involved in, a wider range of community members that were involved in the school district. So I think my first year I was just like in my little classroom bubble and that was it. And then I started to think, oh yeah, there's like that whole school all around me too, where things are happening. And then curriculum writing was like, okay, there's this whole county of things going on. So that was really scary for me to do, but it was a fantastic opportunity. And I felt like, I felt very well respected in that group that we were working in, and people were interested to hear my brand new ideas. And from there, I've done a ton of other presentations, and I would always start those presentations like, it's only my second year teaching, so here goes nothing. And just, you get a lot of like sympathy sometimes from people who attend that are like, okay, like, she's trying her best up there. But I've loved presenting in many different, for many different audiences and many different spheres. And I think that's the best way that you learn, because, people complain a lot about professional development that's not meaningful. Well, then, you have to do something about it, present your own, session that is meaningful in some way. So I would encourage anyone to get involved as soon as possible.
The thing that kind of hit me when you were speaking is that we all have our different styles. We all have our unique abilities and our unique way we put twist on things. While it might be kind of from the same task, maybe we do it on, or maybe a different a twist to or a strategy that we used. We all have that unique thing that I think walking into any professional development you can take away from no matter who's giving it. Almost, I feel like every time, at least that's the openness that I feel when I go into them. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there with it.
I'm interested in this next question because you'll see. One of you was the keynote for the AMMTE Early Career Conference.
Actually,
how was that experience?
There you go.
Oh, you both were.
Zach was first, so I think he should.
Ladies first.
That's,
I'm getting it.
Yeah. So that is my most recent professional development experience.
Awesome.
So I had to make a keynote speech, which was 30 minutes long, which is a very, very long amount of time. But with the help of my math support teacher, my math coach, we kind of found a topic that I'm passionate about outside of the school building. So I'm a big hiker. So I compared the first year of teaching to climbing a mountain. So like literally like every element of hiking and how that compares to teaching in the classroom. So I think that was a really good strategy, because then I was talking about something that I'm already really comfortable talking about, just like in a natural setting. And then I could kind of add in all my education knowledge. But, if you are giving a bigger presentation like that, just, finding something that very well to use as your starting point. It's a great experience. It was also very scary, but
that's really
cool. It was weird in that, like a good weird. And then it was different because the majority of the past professional developments that are or presentations or whatever have you, I'd given was always with somebody. So doing it completely by myself was different. But like Rachel was saying, I think the biggest single thing that I think to any almost professional development is giving something that people relate to and being able to make those connections just like you would in a classroom is no different. So that kind of attracts them to what you're talking about and have that emotional connection to what you're saying.
What a cool experience. That must have been really cool. And I understand terrifying,
Yeah.
but that's really cool. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I just wanted to take a minute and thank everyone for watching, as well as thank you guys for being here tonight. You were awesome. I have a few things that I want to write down before I leave, so that way I don't forget them. Or actually, I can rewatch the video. So thank you so much. Here at MCTM, we have multiple other events coming up. So please check us out at marylandmathematics.org. We hope to see you at a future event. Thank you.
Bye.